Hey there, Chadi Bazzi here, and welcome to another episode of the Top Listing Agent Show. I know what you are thinking. All we do is talk about, how do we find sellers? How do we take listings? And you bring on a superwoman today that's going to talk about how she is dominating her marketplace on the buyer side. And yes, buyers are important because without them, you can't get your listings sold. So without further ado, Jen Davis, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. What a great intro. I'm pumped to be here.
Yep, amazing people get amazing intros, so stay amazing. So Jen, some people may be familiar with, who you are. They probably heard you on other podcasts, and maybe some of my audience have not. So can you just introduce yourself and tell us about how amazing you are?
I will sure try. So my name is Jen Davis. I am located in Springfield, Missouri. I am the CEO of a team called Holt Homes Group. I've been on the team for, almost 9 years. 6 of those years, I actually was our lead buyer specialist. So I took over the role as CEO about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. Our team closed 538 transactions last year. Of those, 240 were buy-side units. But the interesting thing about the 538 is we did that with 6 agents in production. So we run a team dependent model, which means our agents are highly leveraged so that they can sell a lot of units. So that's just a little bit about us and our team.
So it's not the typical team of like 50 agents selling 500 homes a year.
No, it isn't. We provide a majority of the leads. We provide a majority of the admin support so that our agents really can stay in their, strength zone, so that they're, going on listing appointments or they're going on buyer appointments.
God, how long did it take you guys to build such a team? And I'm just curious how many team members you had to go through before you found your super 6 agents.
Sure. Dan Holt is the founder of the company that now I'm the CEO of. I joined the team in 2012. And in 2012, I think we were selling roughly 100, maybe 110 units. So from 2012 to 2020, it took us, we got stuck in the range of 400 to 450 for about 3 years, and then finally broke through. And it took a little bit, to get all the right people in all the right spots, right? So it is an adjustment of personalities, making sure that you match the role to the person so that they can have massive success in the role.
See, I like what you said there is making sure the person matches the role, because I think one of the bigger mistakes that we have in this industry is a lot of people, they hire the individual, they don't hire the job. Just because I like you and you got a good personality and you're a people, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're fit for the job. So they take somebody that's likable and they try to fit them into the job. And what a mistake that always ends up to be. So you've done your due diligence. You've identified, what are the core values? What are the strength that you're looking for an individual? You have an outline for a job description and you go out there recruiting such a person, correct?
That's correct. We know what our org chart looks like. We know what we want it to look like. And so if we come across a person that's a great fit, that's awesome. We can put them in that role. If we come across a great person and maybe we don't have that role available just yet, well, we can keep them on a bench, right? We can keep, it's like a pipeline report. If we look at a pipeline report for listings or buyers, you can keep some type of a pipeline report for talent, right? That's what we're after. We want talented individuals that can succeed within our organization. And the people we've lost in the past have typically been because we didn't fit them into the right role. We recognized that there was talent and we just didn't match it up correctly, or they showed up as talent and maybe they got us to a certain point in the organization, that 250, 300 unit mark, and they weren't the ones to get us to 500. We can still honor them and be thankful for them and the time that they spent with the organization. And at the same time, it's knowing when those adjustments need to be made for your key players on your team.
I love the way you think, Jen. And then there's somebody out there that's either watching this right now or listening to this on the podcast, and they're thinking to themselves, wow, if this team can do 500 plus transactions, I just want a fraction of that. And I want to get to 100 transactions. And I will tell that person right now, it's not about modeling what Jen is doing and her team are doing right now. It's you got to model what she did way back then that got her to where she's at right now. So can you walk us a little bit through the journey of like, you said it began in 2012. You guys were doing about 100 transactions. Can you walk us through a timeline of like, how you grew year over year, what adjustments you made and all that good stuff?
Of course. So in 2012, Dan, the founder of the company, recruited me to be his lead buyer agent. So he had already been in business a year or two. I think that he had maybe started this in 2009 or 2010. But when
Perfect time to start, by the way, right?
Yeah, it was a great time to get into real estate. I think I got licensed in 2007. The benefit of that, though, is I didn't know any different, right? Nobody knew any different. You were like, well, this is what it is. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So I joined in 2012 as our lead buyer specialist. And that was when I joined Dan's team, I joined KW. So I'm a Keller Williams agent, but I hadn't been always. I had been at another brokerage, and my biggest year, I sold 16 houses. And I joined Dan's team, and he looked at the buyer agent role as not a less than role. So he was looking at it as though it was an empire builder role, or that I could build a team within a team. And so the first year that I was on the team, we spent a ton of time looking at how do we become more efficient, right? How is the buy side? How can we mirror the listing side? How can we be proactive instead of reactive? And so that first year was really the year of building out some of our systems. And we ended up, I closed 50 units on the buy side that year. So I went from 16 to 50 closed units, and my life was a mess. I mean, like, I'll be honest, it was hard. I was unorganized. I was, working a million hours a week, and I never felt like I had time with my family. And then Dan and I sat down and we talked about, okay, what do we do, right? We've got the capability of doing massive things, but how do we get this streamlined? How do we make this so we're running it like a business instead of more like a traditional real estate agent? And so we added some leverage for me, and that leverage came in the form of a person. Typically, when there's chaos or you hit a ceiling, you either need a person or you need a system. And we had some great systems in place. We just didn't have enough great people in place. And so I got some administrative help, right? So we brought somebody on that could take off those non-dollar producing activities. And so they came in. And that year, my number jumped from 50 closed buy-side units to 72 closed buy-side units. And then we looked at it and we were like, okay, now what can we leverage, right? Like, now what's our next step? Where do we go from here? How do we get help? And so the next step was really bringing on someone to help me with the pipeline. I had so many buyers that I was dropping the ball, right? I've closed 72 units. I don't really, I'm still getting up super early to manage all of the leads that are coming in, put in a follow-up plan, all of that good stuff. And so we brought in what we call an inside sales agent. Some people, so an ISA or an inside sales agent. And so she came in and handled my nurtures. And so when you're a buyer agent, there's capacity issues with a lot of active buyers. And so we brought somebody in to really help with what that nurturing process looked like, so that I was really only running with those top buyers that could buy right now. And so that next year I closed 110 units on the buy side, and we were again at a ceiling, right? We were at the ceiling where our ISA, she couldn't book any more appointments for me. I had finally gotten some control over my calendar. I finally was like, hey, I'm only going to work 2 nights a week. I'm only going to work 1 day of a weekend. I'm thrilled with 110 closed buyer units. But the team, I was going to be the cap for them if we didn't do something else. So the next piece of leverage that we added were showing agents. And keep in mind, as I'm growing the buy side, Dan's growing the listing side. So that's, I know more about that side of things now that I'm running the entire team, but I was usually about 50% of our production. So when I say I closed 110 buy-side units, the team as a whole probably closed 225 or 250. So just to put that in perspective. Mm-hmm. So the next year, our ISA, she was like, I don't have any more room. Like, there's no more room to book you anything. There's no more availability. There's no more availability for appointments. And she wanted to build out a team within a team and have additional ISAs. And so I added what we call showing agents. Some people call them showing partners, but it's the leverage piece of the relationship with your client, right? It's the piece of the business where I'm saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, somebody else is going to take you and show the home, and I'm really going to handle the negotiations. And so that was 2016. And I added my first showing agent, Kathleen, in January. I added my second one in June, and we jumped up to 182 buyer units closed. And then the next year we jumped up to 225, where we stayed from 2017 until last year. We finally broke through 225 and closed 240 buy-side units. And so when we looked at it, every time we got to a ceiling, the thought was, what do we need? Do we need a better system, or do we need better people? And what does that look like?
You know, I am like hearing you say one word and I'm hearing me say a different word. And, you know, you mentioned the word leverage multiple times. And a lot of people, this is something that they don't really think about. And I think they don't think about it because the word that popped up in my mind is the word strategy. So you were strategizing every step of the way, like, you know, whether you were having that thought in your mind or a meeting with Mr. Holt, and you guys are like, all right, so this is where we at. This is where we want to get to. How do we reverse engineer that? And do we need people? Do we need, you know, or systems, etc.? And then you put that, and then you go out there and you execute on that. Is the execution process as simple as, well, for most people, executing is difficult because most people know what they need to do. What do you got to say about that?
It is difficult. You know, I think I was executing something that there wasn't really a roadmap for, right? What we were trying to do is honestly, those people that are familiar with KW, if you have read the Red Book, the MREA, we were trying to replicate what a rainmaker, so like what a business owner would do for the entire business. We were trying to replicate that on the buy side. It's hard. I mean, I rattled off those numbers and it sounds like it was easy. It was a challenge. It was a challenge to know what was the right next step. It was a challenge to know the right people to hire. It was a challenge to figure out what the compensation structure might be. All of those things were difficult. And I think that's why you have podcasts like this, right? Is because we don't want people that come behind us to make maybe the same mistakes that we made, right? We're called, like, I feel called to, you know, we're required, in my opinion, to share our time, our treasure, and our talents.
And that's my motto. My motto is, you know, list more or sell more so you could give more. And that's what we're doing here is, you know, we're giving back to this industry that we love so much.
That's right. I wish that I knew, you know, if I would have known then what I know now, that I could have avoided some mistakes. And so when I look at time invested, I think to myself, that's what we're here for. That's what we're called to do, is to help people. So yeah, the strategy, it was a strategy. We did sit down, we had conversations and disagreements on how it should go and what it would look like. And it was ever evolving. I think what has to happen when you're building a big business is you've got to set your ego aside. Yeah. There are times when my idea was the best one in the room. There are times when my idea is the worst one in the room. Yeah. And it's being able to have the emotional intelligence to say, okay, I can pivot and make an adjustment and go a different direction if that's what's best for the company and for my clients.
Love it. So, you know, Jen, you said, you know, there was no roadmap. There was no roadmap on how to do what we wanted to do. So basically, that's my way of thinking, is that if there's no way, we got to find a way. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that was your mentality. And I think that is the mentality that we all need to have. Like, you know, I need to figure out a way to take me, my life, my business, and provide more for my family. Like, that's my obligation. That's my duty. And at the end of the day, most people don't have the mental capacity to take on such a thing. So mental toughness, I see you as a mentally tough person that can sit there and sift through, you know, the agony, the puzzles in the back of your mind, the struggles that you know you're about to face in order for you to, you know, quantum leap the business and stuff like that. What is it specifically that you do to keep your head in the game?
You know, I think there have been various things along the journey that I've done. And I think one of them is I am careful who I let into my head, right? I'm very careful of what I listen to, of what I read, of where I spend my time. So what I know is if I fill myself with good stuff, right? Good podcasts, good books, going to church and living a faith-filled life, those types of things. If I fill myself with the good stuff comes out under pressure, right? If I live in an abundant mindset or a faith-filled mindset, that's what comes out. There have been seasons in my life where I have not put good stuff in, right? Where I have listened to the news or spent too much time on social media or, let the negative come in. And then in stressful times, that's what comes out, right? What I put in here is what comes out during hard times. And so I'm very careful about what I let in. I'm very careful about who I let in. And I also look at it and I'm like, I have a circle of people in my life that they want me to win. They want me to win. They're proud of my successes. They're also not afraid to call me on it when my idea is the worst in the room, right? They're not afraid to say, hey, I think that's a misstep. I think that's part of it. It's making sure that every day we show up to live our best life. And I'm not going to win the day every day. I'm not. I know that there are going to be challenging days. However, I'm never going to get stuck in the challenge. The next day, I'm just going to move forward. I'm going to make the adjustments that I learned from the day before, and we're going to move forward.
Right. So basically, you're saying your input determines your output. That's
Yes.
number one.
Much shorter version of that. Yes, you're right.
And number two is like, what I like to call is your circle of power. Your circle of power are, the people in your environment whom you're having the most amount of conversations with. And what does that conversation revolve around? Does that conversation revolve around the lack and the chaos that's happening in the world, or does it revolve around abundance and possibility and prosperity and beauty and joy and happiness and faith and family and all those beautiful things? So basically, if I could sum it all up into just two words, it would be the two words of personal responsibility. You take responsibility for everything. Now you mentioned reading. Okay. Is there just like one book that you would recommend to, like just one book that says, everyone that's listening to this podcast, you got to go out there and you got to get this book today and you got to study it and you got to implement what's in it and it will positively impact your life and business?
Oh, really? Just one?
I know there's a ton, but just one.
I think the best book I read in the last 2 years is Chase the Lion.
I gotta write that one down.
That is great. That is one where it's basically if your goal's not big enough to scare you, it should be. And it's a good balance of like business and personal and how to make yourself a better human. That's my top one in the last 2 years.
Awesome. So the lion behind me says, you got to go chase the lion. So I'll go ahead and pick up that book myself and read it. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I put down a personal question that I personally put down before I get into some of the questions that some of my students wanted me to ask you. Put down, doing the amount of transactions that you're doing, that ain't going to happen if you ain't given the absolutely best service that you possibly can to the people that say, hey, I'd love the opportunity to work with you. How do you like in delegation, how do you delegate and keep customers happy?
I think it's learning from mistakes. Typically during growth periods, there's a little bit of a shakeup in the consumer experience. And I think it's going back and double checking what went wrong and how do we fix it. So we look at it and we do check-ins. We survey our clients. It's not a survey that I'm emailing out, but I may call someone that just went under contract. I may call someone that I'm not helping. I'm not the agent on file, but that either just listed their house with us or didn't list their house with us. And I'm calling to check in to see what went well and what are the opportunities for growth. I also think it's having the right people in your organization. If I know that I'm going to delegate this to somebody else, then I'm going to make sure that that person has a great understanding of what that customer service is and what my expectations are around it. My level of customer service might not be the same level as yours or vice versa. If we put people into the culture of our team that believe in the spirit of our team and what that client relationship looks like, there's never a drop ball. Everybody wants to move forward at the same pace. Okay,
so what it sounds like to me is that, obviously you made some mistakes along the way and you you just fix those mistakes and you make the next experience even better, and you have good solid systems in place. And I'm just curious, at your level of production, what percentage of your business would you say is repeat and referral business?
It's 45%.
Okay, which is way more than the industry standards. I mean, like people like, if I can get 10% of my database to give me some repeat and referral business, that is good. So what do you have, like a framework for how you keep in touch with your past clients and centers of influence? Like everybody be always asking me, like, how often should I call? What do I send out? All that good stuff. I'm just curious to find out what your system's like, because 45% is it's, I mean, we're talking about a couple hundred transactions here a year.
It is. We've made a big push on it. We are very much prospecting based. I mean, we are on the phones, we're dialing, we're lead generating, and we're closing the back door. We're making sure that the people that are clients of ours are forever clients of ours. So I think often people talk about like a 36 touch, and ours is double that, right? Our touches are double that. What I will tell you though is the message we're giving them has value. I'm not just connecting with them to tell them, in the fall what the best pumpkin pie recipe is. We're reaching out to them and saying, here's what your home is worth. People don't understand what a seller's market means right now. Yeah. And I think if there was one thing that your listeners could take away from this is, if every person in your database doesn't know what their home is worth right now, you're doing a disservice to them. If you think they don't want to know, you've lost your marbles, right? So we're calling people and we're saying, you bought this house from us in 2018 for $300,000. We just sold one down the street for $425,000. They don't know when they hear seller's market on the news,
they have no idea what it means.
They have to their bottom line. And guys, it's life-changing money to some people. We have just come out of a very challenging year, and you've got people that have lost jobs, that have lost family members, and we don't know what the swing of $50, $75, $100, $200,000 in equity might do for a family right now. So when I'm saying that we connect with our database at a high level, we're providing them that type of value. They know what their home is worth. They know where to go for resources if they need help. And I heard it said, there's a friend of mine, Sarah Detmore, that often says, people that don't want to call their database, are you call reluctant or value deficient? And it is so smart, because if you don't want to call someone, are you questioning what value you have to bring to their life, or do you just not want to make that call? Because it's a difference. We can always add value.
Which one do you think? Which one of the two do you think the one that keeps people not making the calls more? Is it the value one, or they just call reluctance, or is it a combination?
I think they're call reluctant. I think that I think that agents are not agents that listen to your podcast. I think that agents that are average or below average there's some fear there, and maybe a little bit of laziness, right? Yeah. It's hard work. It's not fun to call 20 people in a day, or 100 people in a day, or 200 people in a day, until you add value. And I think that's the message. People think that someone on the other end of the phone is going to be annoyed by the phone call. If they're in your database, they've either at some point signed up for something, bought something, sold something
they saw the value to get into your database.
Right. We've got to provide additional content to them. Where we need to meet them where they're at. What do they need? How can we help them? Do they know what their home is worth? Do they know what it would be to refinance right now? Maybe they don't want to sell. That's totally fine. We're in this for the long game. And I think that people get discouraged when they're trying to call for right now business. Right now business will come from this. And we're also bulletproofing our careers. We're making sure that we can be in the real estate industry for a long time.
Yeah, you got to think lifetime value of a client. And, in my experience is that there's a lot of people in your database that may never, ever buy another home or need to sell their home, but the relationship is what will lead you to a person that they know that wants to either buy or sell real estate. And a lot of people don't think of it that way. They're just thinking like, oh, they're not going to sell anymore, or they don't need to buy anymore. And then they just move on to the next, to the next thing. So you're touching your database. I mean, you just said, not 36, but double that. So basically we're talking about like once a week. And I'm sure you're not making a phone call to every single person every single week. It's a combination of things that you do, right?
It's a combination of things. We've got calls, we've got emails, we've got text messages, we have client events, we have giveaways, we have social media type stuff. And it's basically, it's all lined out, and it's different for different people. It's different for a past client than just somebody that made it into our database. Maybe they registered on our website. There's a different messaging that goes along for different types of clients.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because a lot of people, what they do is they just like message, it's like a one-off message. And, I believe in segmenting your database. Like, first of all, what is a lead source? Is this a buyer? Is this a seller? Because the way you speak to a buyer is completely different than the way you speak to a seller. And a lot of people, that's where the strategy comes into play, to sit down and plan that out. So thanks for sharing that, because some people do need to hear that, because a lot of people are doing it incorrectly, and they're wondering why people are unsubscribing from their database, and or just flat out not opening up the emails to begin with.
Well, and I think that's a really good point that you just made. When someone unsubscribes from your database because you sent them one too many recipes, you're losing them before you've given them the value, right? Once they unsubscribe, we're done. We have no more options for them. And so we've got to make sure that those value adds come more often than the filler stuff. We have filler stuff too. I mean, that comes too. And there has to be enough value and enough content in what they're receiving from us that they're not unsubscribing.
Yeah, and I think where a lot of people get stuck here, Jen, and I want to spend a little bit of time on this. The reason being is because my belief is that the most neglected system in real estate is the most important system, and that is your database. That's your book of business. That's the collection of all the people that see the value in you, that could totally blow up your business in a positive way, as it's doing for you guys. And when it comes down to the value, a lot of people are in the mindset of like, okay, well, I just don't know how to add value besides just giving a market update. Can you give us a couple of ideas on how one could add value?
Outside of market knowledge, it starts with a care call. It's calling a client and saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Past Client, this is Jen. I just thought about you. How are you guys? We're a year into the coronavirus. How are you? And then listening. If the fastest way to add value is to give someone a resource. How are you? Is there anything that you need? Have you been vaccinated? Do you need a list of places to go get vaccinated? Whatever it might be, whatever your opinions are on the vaccination, whatever the topic of the moment is, do you need a resource? I am here to help. Because guess what? By the end of the care call, they typically say, hey, Jen, how are you? How are your kids? How's your family? How's the market? Market is fantastic. Thanks so much for asking. We're having I'll make sure that I update you on your numbers and so you know what your home is worth, blah, 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 blah. Or I might just say, things are selling for 25% more than they did a year ago. It's an incredible market to be involved in right now.
Or interest rates are down,
It doesn't matter. You go where the conversation leads you, but I think people think that every call has to be, who do you know that wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? That's not what it is. Those can be calls, but if I call a potential or a past client and they say, oh, we just love our house, we would never consider moving, I will say something like, I totally get that. We hit it out of the park when we found you that house. You got a great deal on it. We sold your neighbor's house for $50,000 more last month. By the way, I have multiple buyers looking in your neighborhood. If you even see a for sale by owner sign, could you take a picture of it and send it to me?
Love it.
Then they're doing me a favor. They think they're helping me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So look, at the end of the day, there's no right and there's no wrong. And I think people just need to get out of their head, and they just need to, focus more on the relationship. And it's like, I'm in the mindset of like, how do you build a relationship with someone to where you never ever need to ask them for a referral, and that referral gets volunteered just because of, sometimes the value that you're given is nothing more than your ear to listen about what's important to them and what is happening in their life. And that has nothing to do with real estate, but it has everything to do with real estate and your business and everything else, if that makes any sense to you. So that is like,
It's awesome. What you're saying is we're going vertical in relationship with people, right? We're going deep into relationship with them. We're not superficial. We're not surface level. We actually know their kids' names and their pets' names, and if their mom passed away or something happened to them. And we are building, I mean, that's what we're in. We're in the relationship business. And so we're making sure that our relationships are strong enough that in the event that they run across someone that wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, that they give our name.
Yeah. And you mentioned the word kids. Do you have any children?
I do. I have two. I have a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old.
God bless them. God bless them.
Amazing.
Yeah. So now I got to ask the other question. Then, as a mom, how do we balance, the home life, making sure we're taking care of, our children and, growing our business and, taking care of our clients at the same time. A lot of people they have I had somebody last week reach out to me and they're like, I'm doing good in my business, but, I'm not doing good at home. So it's like the mom guilt,
It is a mom guilt. And I think my best piece of advice, and I have said it before and I've said it a handful of other times, but be where your feet are. I'm either all at work or I'm all at home. And I am intentional with my time. So what I mean by being intentional with my time is if I need to pick up kids today at 4:00, my last meeting is done at 3:00. I have an hour to clean up what's happening at the office, to handle any issues that are arising so that by the time I'm home, I'm present with them. Now, I don't live in a Pollyanna world and that no one ever calls me at night and nothing ever bad ever happens on a weekend. However, I can let it not ruin my whole day. I can not be on the phone 8 hours on a Saturday. I can set expectations with my kids. I can set expectations with clients of when I'm available. And then when I'm with whoever, if I'm at work, I'm fully invested in work. I am there to work. I'm not on social media. I am not, chit-chatting around the office. I am fully engaged in here. And if I'm at home, it's the same thing. It doesn't mean that there's never a little bit of a distraction. However, I build in enough margin in my day that I have the capacity to handle things as they pop up. And so I'm never, I really try very hard not to be overbooked, because that's when that feeling of never being enough fills in, right? Or that I can't be all things to all people. I can't be all things to all people. So I have to say yes to the things that are important to me and no to the things that aren't.
Got it. So at the end of the day, again, it boils down to personal responsibility. And am I doing the things that I need to do when I'm supposed to do them? So that way, when I'm with my family, I don't have to think about what I didn't do that I was supposed to do. And, what.
It's a vicious cycle. You're right. It's a vicious cycle where we're like, maybe we're at the office for 8 hours a day, but we're really only working 5 of those hours. So the stuff that we should have done during the day then hits us at night. And we're like, oh, I'm always working. I would challenge that. Like, are you really always working, or is there some, or there maybe not parameters around what we constitute as work and what we constitute as play?
Got it. So again, take responsibility for making sure you show up when you're supposed to show up, where you're supposed to show up, and be there, be present. All right. So here's a question from somebody I'm coaching that does about 100 transactions a year. And obviously she wants to go above and beyond 100 transactions a year. And she wrote down a couple of things. She said, ask Jen if she's still making calls.
Yes. So I am still making calls. Mine are typically, I'm not anymore calling for sell by owners or expireds or, new leads that come in. That would be handled by the rest of my team. I am certainly dialing for on care calls, right? So I'm calling my past clients and database. I'm also typically calling and looking for talent. So another idea for a script would be, if I call a past client and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Past Client, I just wanted to let you know we're looking for a brand new listing agent for our team. If you know of anybody that would be a great fit, let me know. So I'm asking for who they know that might be a good fit for our team. And typically that also turns around having a conversation about the real estate market.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So what does a typical day in the life of Jen look like?
It's different now than it used to be, so I mean,
can we make that 2 questions in one? Because, obviously now it's completely different than what it used to be. And most people will probably be able to relate to what it used to be before, and they want to be like you today. So can we start off with like what it used to be like and what it's like right now?
Used to be, I've always done the drop off for kids, right? So I typically am not in the office until about 8:30, but 8:30 to 9 is typically was and is a temp check. How's everybody else in the office doing? What's going on? Anything crazy happened that I need to know about? 9 to 10:30 or 11, I'm going to make calls. And then after 11, it used to be consults. So I would do buyer consults from, 11 to 12:30 or 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock. And then I would go into showings. The thing that I did well is the consults all happened back to back. So it wasn't consult, then showing, then consult, then showing. I was done with consults and then I went into showings. And then I showed at that point in my life, I typically showed 2 nights a week till about 8 o'clock at night. The other days I was typically done by 5 o'clock. And then I usually worked one of the 2 days of the weekend. So one day I was all the way off, and then one day I showed property, usually from 9 to 5 or 6.
Got it. Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think that's going to shed some light for some people on whether they're doing things the right way and what corrections they need to make.
Well, and I think people will say, well, how did you get your clients, to only go along with the 2 nights a week? We do what we call forward pacing. So if I had several clients that liked nights or weekends, I was getting them on the calendar first, right? And I would call and say, hey, I don't think this house is going to last very long. Instead of going tomorrow night at 6, I really need you to go today at 2 o'clock or we're not going to have a chance on it. Right now, this market will do the heavy lifting for you to get back your nights and weekends. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, the showing times that are available are going to be during the day, and we want to get in first. That's what I would do.
I love it. And talking about, the current market and all that good stuff, and for you guys to be doing, that many, sales on the buyer side, I think the biggest challenge that a lot of people are having right now is they have buyers and they're having a hard time getting their offers accepted because of a tight inventory. How do you have any tips or strategies on how to get your offers accepted in such market conditions right now?
A couple of things, I think making sure that we're having the communication with the listing agent of outside of price, what matters to your seller, and then listening. We know what the price is as a buyer agent. If you've done any homework at all, you know what price it's going to take to win the offer. The things that are killing buyers agents are the little stuff, right? The deadlines and the earnest money, or the not waiving certain things, or, potentially giving post-possession or a lease back or something like that. Talk to the listing agent. What's important to their seller and match those terms. The second piece of advice I would give is the MLS is not our only source of business. We are licensed agents and we can go find inventory. So when we talk about personal responsibility, part of personal responsibility is being solution-based. If the problem is inventory, my solution is to find it. That's how we operate every day. So I'm going to go find inventory for my buyers, because and someone's going to push back in your group and they're going to say, but that's a disservice to the sellers. If they put it on the market, they'd get more money. Maybe not, because number one, there are some sellers that don't want 35 people through their house on the first day. They don't want people in their house. Number two, I didn't say that our buyers were underpaying for the house. The buyers are willing to pay for the convenience to not compete. They're willing to pay for the convenience to not compete. So if you look at being a listing agent or a seller's agent, we're not saying that we're going to discount the value to the seller. We're just saying we're going to match make in real estate. The MLS is not our only source of business. I'm a licensed agent. I have the capacity to find off-market properties.
So I like that. He said, we're solution based. It's like, what is the best strategy, for this person? What is the best strategy for, whether it's the buyer or the seller, et cetera? You're always thinking about, you're coming from a place of like, what is the best solution, not what is the best way for me to make a paycheck.
That's right. I want to find the best house at the best price for every buyer that we're working with. And the best price is the price that secures them the home of their dreams. It doesn't mean it's the least expensive price.
Right. Jen, this has been great. I mean, I have a lot of questions, but they're all like repetitive questions as I'm looking at them right here. But let me see if Mari Lou said something else right there. Okay, moving. How much social media marketing do you guys do?
A lot. We have a marketing person on staff that does all of that. She was actually a hire this year. Before that, we just contracted that labor out, and that person did a great job for us. And we were missing the boat on having somebody full time. So she handles all of our Instagram, Facebook. She does the analytics behind Google, so we can see, where we stack up, who's looking at it. She's pushing our website so that it can be, higher SEO, so that people go direct to our website instead of just somehow landing on our page. And all of that we have one person that handles all of those types of marketing, all that type of marketing for us.
Love it. So Jen, if there's a question that I should have asked you today that I didn't ask you, that I should ask you, what would that question be?
Should have asked me that didn't ask me. Probably mistakes.
Yeah, okay, very good. So tell us all about the mistakes you've made.
I think it's understanding that as we grow, there are going to be mistakes that are made. And some of those mistakes are going to be with people. And some of those mistakes they might be clients, they might be team members, and some mistakes are a little easier to fix. But it's understanding as you make those mistakes, the faster you own up to it, the personal responsibility again, the faster you own up to it, the quicker you're going to move forward. And so I think there were a lot of times that I was hesitant to let somebody go or bring somebody on or do whatever, because I was worried that it was a mistake. And just understanding that if you do it with good intentions, it always works out okay.
Not only that, you can't really be learning from mistakes that you're not allowing yourself to make. And,
Right.
You got to understand that mistakes is part of the process.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people think of a mistake as failure. It's just feedback for something that you're not doing at the level that you should. And you must do it. There's something else that crossed my mind for a second, and I kind of lost it right now as we were talking about the mistakes. You said, not sure if it'll come back, but it is what it is. You said, we'll just have to rewind this and get, I was going to say this. You literally just won a prize, because a lot of people don't know this, but I always ask the question, if there's something that I should ask you, that I didn't ask you, that I should ask you, what would it be? You're the first person to give me a response, because most people are just stopped in their track. They're like, oh, well, I can't think of anything.
I get a prize. Yay.
You do get a prize. We'll think of a good prize, and we'll send that prize to you. So Jen, I just want to say thank you very much for being on the show today, for speaking freely and contributing to our audience and in this industry that we love so much. And I just want to say thank you for being an example for possibility, not only for women but for men too, for everyone alike. And I know there's somebody out there that's going to be like, man, I just want to step into Jen's world. I want a little bit more of her. I want to be able to observe her online, etc. How can people find you?
A couple of ways. I'll give my email address, which is just my name. It's jendaviskw@gmail.com. And then I also do a group coaching class for Keller Williams. You do not have to be a Keller Williams agent to participate in it.
Right.
It is called the Mega Buyer Agent. We're in the middle of a launch right now. The next one I think launches July 14th. And it's basically 6 weeks of how I built the buy side. And I co-coach it with Sarah Detmore that I referenced earlier. And it's all of our scripts and tracking and what we look for and all that good stuff. So those would be 2 good options to connect with me.
Love it. So the Mega Buyer Agent, and is that the megabuyeragent.com, so you can put it in the show notes, or how do we find it?
To mapscoaching.com, it'll be / the Mega Buyer Agent.
Got it. And you don't need to be a KW agent in order for you to get to that.
Nope.
Awesome. And of course, your Instagram, Facebook is another way to find you.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate you so much. Thank you very much for being on the show. And I think we're going to need a part 2 to this. And I look forward to doing that with you sometime in the near future. I appreciate you.
That sounds great. Thanks so much for having me. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.